I, 28M, inherited my grandmother's house when she passed away last year. This whole situation is complex, so let me give some background. My parents divorced when I was 7, and my mom struggled with depression afterward. She wasn't really able to take care of me properly, and my dad had moved across the country for work. My grandmother stepped in and basically raised me. The house I inherited isn't anything fancy, just a 3-bedroom single-story in a quiet neighborhood built in the 1970s. But it's where I grew up, full of memories and the only real home I've ever known. My grandmother left it to me in her will because I was the only one who visited her regularly and helped take care of her in her final years. I spent every weekend there during her last 2 years, helping with medications, taking her to doctor appointments, and just keeping her company. My cousin Harold, 32M, has always been the problem child in our family. Growing up, he was constantly in trouble, stealing from stores, getting into fights, and eventually dropping out of high school. My Aunt Linda, 54F, always made excuses for him, saying he had ADHD and was just misunderstood. She enabled his behavior, constantly bailing him out of trouble and giving him money. Harold managed to get into community college but dropped out after 1 semester. He's had probably 15 different jobs in the last decade, never lasting more than a few months at each one. He's been married and divorced twice. His first marriage lasted 6 months before his wife caught him cheating. His second wife Sarah took him for everything he had in the divorce after discovering he had gambled away their savings and maxed out multiple credit cards in her name. I hadn't really spoken to Harold much in recent years. He showed up to grandmother's funeral, complained about not getting anything in the will, then disappeared again. So I was surprised when he called me 3 months ago saying he was being evicted from his apartment and needed a place to stay. He sounded desperate, saying he had nowhere else to go and promised it would just be for a few weeks until he got back on his feet. Against my better judgment, and despite my girlfriend Rachel warning me it was a bad idea, I agreed to let him stay in one of the spare bedrooms. I work as a software developer and make good money, so covering the bills wasn't an issue. I figured helping family through a rough patch was the right thing to do. The first week was actually okay. Harold kept to himself, was fairly quiet, and seemed genuinely grateful. He even cleaned up after himself and bought groceries once with the last of his money. But things started changing during week 2. It started small. He began inviting friends over without asking, leaving dirty dishes everywhere, and eating all the food without contributing anything. The friends would stay late, being loud while I was trying to work. I work from home 3 days a week. When I confronted him about it, he always had excuses. He was broke. He had job interviews lined up. He'd pay me back once he got on his feet. He even tried guilt-tripping me, saying grandmother would have wanted him to feel welcome here. That particularly bothered me because grandmother had actually warned me about Harold before she died, telling me never to loan him money or trust his promises. The real problem started about a month ago when his new girlfriend Maria moved in without my permission. I came home from work one day to find her stuff all over the living room, clothes, makeup, even her pet cat which I'm allergic to. Harold acted like it was no big deal, saying she needed a place to stay too and there was plenty of room. When I told him firmly that she couldn't live here, he accused me of being selfish and said I was hoarding grandmother's house. Within days, they had completely taken over. I went on a weekend trip to visit Rachel, and when I came back, they had moved into the master bedroom, which was my room. They had moved all my things to the smallest bedroom, which they had cleared out by putting my stuff in the garage. They had rearranged all the furniture and even taken down some of grandmother's photos that had been on the walls. When I confronted them, Harold said the master bedroom made more sense for them since there were 2 of them. He said I was being selfish for wanting it all to myself when I had the whole house. Maria chimed in saying they were making the space more livable and that my grandmother's decor was outdated anyway. I gave them a formal 30-day notice to vacate, printed out and everything. Harold laughed and ripped it up, saying I couldn't evict family. He claimed grandmother had verbally promised him years ago that he could always live in the house if he needed to. This was a complete lie. Grandmother couldn't stand Harold and his irresponsible behavior. She had actually changed her will 5 years ago specifically to exclude him after he tried to get her to co-sign a car loan. The final straw came last week when I discovered they had pawned some of my grandmother's jewelry that I had been keeping in my dresser drawer. These weren't just any pieces, they included her wedding ring and a locket that had been passed down through 4 generations. When I discovered they were missing and confronted Harold, he first denied taking them. Then when I said I was calling the police, he changed his story and claimed he had just borrowed them temporarily and would get them back. I called the police anyway and filed a report, but Harold and Maria had some story ready about how the jewelry was actually promised to him by grandmother. Since they're now legally residents and there was no proof either way about the jewelry, the police said it was a civil matter. I've started formal eviction proceedings but Harold is fighting it every step of the way. He's telling everyone in the family that I'm a greedy, heartless person who is trying to make him and his pregnant girlfriend homeless. Yes, Maria is suddenly pregnant, though the timing seems very convenient and I haven't seen any actual evidence of this pregnancy. My Aunt Linda is blowing up my phone constantly, saying I need to be more understanding and that family helps family. She's convinced Harold has finally matured and just needs one more chance. She even had the nerve to say grandmother would be ashamed of me for not sharing my unearned wealth with less fortunate family members. I feel like I'm going crazy. This was my grandmother's house that she specifically left to me after I spent years helping care for her. I tried to help Harold out of kindness and he's completely taken advantage of me. Now I'm somehow the bad guy for wanting my own house back? I've already contacted a lawyer, but the eviction process could take months. I don't know what to do anymore. Update 1: I need to update everyone because things have gotten so much worse than I could have imagined. The day after my original post, Harold somehow got access to my grandmother's old email account. I still don't know how. Maybe he guessed her password or found it written down somewhere in the house. He dug through years of old emails and found some from 5 years ago where my grandmother had told him he could always consider this house your home too. The emails were from when Harold was going through his second divorce and grandmother was just trying to be nice. She never actually meant he could live here permanently. Now he's using these out of context emails to try to fight the eviction. His lawyer, yes, he somehow found a lawyer willing to take his case, is arguing that these emails prove my grandmother intended for Harold to have a right to live here. They're trying to claim he has some sort of verbal lifetime tenancy agreement. My lawyer says it's nonsense, but it's still delaying everything. The jewelry situation has gotten much worse too. Remember those pieces he pawned from my drawer? That was just the beginning. Last weekend, I was looking through some old photos in grandmother's study when I noticed something odd about the painting behind her desk. It was slightly crooked, and when I went to straighten it, I discovered her wall safe was open behind it. My heart sank immediately. The safe had contained all of her most precious belongings, family heirlooms going back generations, including my great-grandfather's war medals, my late grandfather's watch collection, and about $5,000 in cash she had kept for emergencies. Everything was gone. Every single item. When I confronted Harold, he didn't even try to deny it this time. Instead, he claimed grandmother had given him the combination years ago and told him he could access it whenever he needed help. This is another complete lie. She only gave the combination to me last year when she was in the hospital. I was the only one she trusted with it. I called the police again but got the same response. It's a civil matter since he's a resident and there's no proof he didn't have permission to access the safe. They said without video evidence or witnesses, it's just his word against mine. I feel completely helpless watching him steal my family's history piece by piece. My Aunt Linda has gotten even worse. Not only is she still taking Harold's side, but now she's threatening to contest the will. She's claiming grandmother wasn't of sound mind when she made me the sole inheritor. She's telling everyone that grandmother had dementia in her final years. Absolutely false. She was sharp as a tack until the end, and that I manipulated her into changing her will to cut everyone else out. The stress of all this is destroying me. I can barely sleep knowing they're in my house, going through my things when I'm not there. I installed security cameras in my bedroom and office, but they complained to the police about invasion of privacy since they're tenants. I had to take them down. Maria has started a real smear campaign in the neighborhood. She's very pregnant now, or at least looks it. I still have my doubts, and has been going door to door telling neighbors I'm trying to force an expecting mother onto the streets in winter. She's really playing up the sympathy angle, crying and saying they have nowhere else to go. Some neighbors who don't know the full story are completely falling for it. One elderly couple left a nasty note on my door calling me a monster. Another neighbor reported me to Child Protective Services claiming I was endangering an unborn child through harassment. The house itself is being destroyed bit by bit. Harold and Maria have started doing unauthorized renovations without my permission. They knocked down a wall between 2 bedrooms, claiming they needed to make a nursery. The wall they knocked down turns out to be load-bearing. I had a contractor friend look at it secretly and he says it could cause serious structural issues. They've also repainted several rooms in horrible bright colors and installed some kind of weird light fixtures they bought at a flea market. When I objected to these changes, Harold said they were just making the place more livable and that I should be grateful they're improving our house. He keeps emphasizing the our part, like he truly believes he has an equal claim to it. Maria has even started telling people she's going to name the baby after my grandmother to keep her memory alive in her house. My lawyer says we have a strong case for eviction, but it could take 3 to 4 months with how backed up the courts are. He says offering them money to leave might backfire as it could be seen as acknowledging they have some right to be here. Plus, given Harold's history, he'd probably take the money and still refuse to leave. The only small victory in all this is that I managed to get into grandmother's safe deposit box at the bank before Harold found out about it. At least her will, birth certificates, and most valuable jewelry are secure there. But every day I find more things missing or damaged in the house. They've sold or pawned anything they could get their hands on. Family photos have disappeared. Even grandmother's old recipe books that she handwrote over decades are gone. I feel like I'm watching my grandmother's legacy being destroyed piece by piece, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. The house that was once filled with warm memories is now just a source of stress and conflict. I'm starting to understand why grandmother warned me about Harold all those years ago. I just wish I had listened. Update 2: This update is going to be shocking. Yesterday, Sarah, Harold's ex-wife, reached out to me after seeing my posts about the situation on social media. What she revealed about Harold has completely changed everything, and honestly, I feel like an idiot for not doing more research before letting him into my house. Sarah saw my post in a local Facebook group where I was asking for advice about the eviction process. She messaged me immediately, asking if Harold was still with a woman named Maria and if they were claiming to be expecting a baby. When I confirmed this, she called me and spent 2 hours telling me about Harold's real history. Apparently, what he's doing to me isn't just opportunistic freeloading, it's his actual career. According to Sarah, Harold has been running this same scam for the past 6 years, targeting family members and elderly people who live alone. She found out about it during their divorce proceedings when his old phone records and emails revealed everything. The pattern is always the same. He finds someone with a house, usually a relative or elderly person living alone. He shows up with a sob story about needing temporary help. Once he's in, he brings in a female accomplice who quickly announces a pregnancy. They take over the house, claim some sort of verbal agreement or promise about their right to live there, and make it as difficult as possible for the owner to remove them. Sarah told me about his previous scams in detail. Before targeting me, he did this to her elderly Aunt Martha. Harold moved in temporarily, claiming he needed a place while going through our divorce. Within weeks, he had moved in a different girlfriend, not Maria, claimed the aunt had promised him he could live there, and even used a fake pregnancy story. The aunt, who was 76 at the time, became so stressed she had a stroke and had to be moved to a nursing home. Harold and his girlfriend lived in her house rent-free for over a year before finally being evicted. But here's the worst part, Maria isn't just some innocent girlfriend caught up in Harold's schemes. She's actually a known accomplice who has worked with him before. She's not even really pregnant, she uses a series of increasingly larger prosthetic pregnancy bellies to sell the story. Sarah sent me links to court records showing Maria has been involved in at least 4 similar scams in other states, sometimes using different names. After talking to Sarah, I hired a private investigator. Within days, he found multiple police reports and court records showing Harold and Maria's pattern of behavior. They've done this in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, always targeting family members or elderly people who live alone. They stay until they've stripped the house of anything valuable, then move on to their next target. The investigator discovered something else that shocked me. Maria is actually still legally married to someone in Florida and has outstanding warrants in 2 states for fraud and theft. She's not just a squatter, she's a professional scammer who specifically targets vulnerable homeowners. I've turned all this information over to my lawyer and the police. Now that there's evidence of a broader pattern of fraud, they're taking it much more seriously. The police have reopened the investigation into the stolen jewelry and safe contents, and they're coordinating with departments in other states where Harold and Maria have warrants. My Aunt Linda still doesn't believe any of it. When I showed her the court records and police reports, she accused me of fabricating them to make Harold look bad. She's convinced this is all some elaborate plot I've created to deny her son his rightful inheritance. Several other family members are also still defending Harold, saying he's being set up or that his past mistakes shouldn't define him. The most infuriating part is that while all this was coming to light, Harold and Maria were still causing damage to the house. They've now removed and sold all the copper piping from the basement, claiming they were updating the plumbing. They've also somehow managed to access my grandmother's old investment accounts and are trying to claim she verbally promised those to Harold as well. My lawyer is drafting emergency court filings based on the new evidence of fraud. He says this changes everything. Instead of a simple eviction, we're now looking at criminal charges for organized fraud and theft. The police have finally issued warrants for both Harold and Maria, but they're claiming they can't remove them from the house without a formal eviction order unless they catch them committing a crime. I feel like such a fool for not checking into Harold's background before letting him stay. Sarah warned me that Harold and Maria are likely planning their next scam already, probably targeting another family member once they're finally forced out of my house. At least now I have proof that this wasn't just family drama, it was a calculated criminal operation from the start. Update 3 Finally, I have a resolution to share, though it's not exactly a happy ending. After my last update, things moved quickly. The police arrested Maria when she tried to pawn more of my grandmother's jewelry at a shop where I had already alerted them. They found the fake pregnancy prosthetics in her car, along with documents showing their next potential targets, including addresses and personal information of several elderly residents in nearby towns. Harold tried to run when the police showed up, but they caught him trying to break into my grandmother's old investment account at the bank. He's facing multiple felony charges now: fraud, theft, and identity theft. The police found extensive evidence in their phones showing this was all planned from the start. They had actually been watching my grandmother's house for months before she died, waiting for the right moment to make their move. The damage they left behind is worse than I initially thought. The load-bearing wall they removed has caused the ceiling to sag dangerously. My contractor estimates it will cost at least $30,000 to repair properly. They didn't just sell the copper pipes, they damaged the foundation while removing them, leading to water damage throughout the basement. Almost every room needs major repairs. But the physical damage isn't what hurts the most. They destroyed or sold almost everything of sentimental value. My grandmother's handwritten recipes, family photos, even her old Christmas ornaments that we made together when I was a kid, all gone. The investigator found some items at various pawn shops, but most things are lost forever. My Aunt Linda finally apologized after the arrests, but the damage to our relationship is permanent. She admitted she had known about some of Harold's previous scams but convinced herself he had changed. She even knew about the fake pregnancy scheme but thought Maria was different this time. Other family members are split, some have apologized for doubting me, while others still insist Harold just needs help and support. I've gone completely no contact with that entire side of the family. Some are still defending Harold, saying prison won't help him and that we should find a way to get the charges dropped. My aunt even had the nerve to ask if I would write a letter to the judge requesting leniency. I refused. The house is being repaired slowly, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. Every room holds memories of both my grandmother and this nightmare situation. I'm selling it once the repairs are done. I found a nice condo closer to my office, and honestly, I need a fresh start somewhere without all this history. The only positive outcome is that several other victims of Harold's scams have come forward. The prosecutor is combining all the cases, and Harold is looking at serious prison time. Maria took a plea deal and will testify against him. She's already serving time for her previous warrants. I did recover some of my grandmother's jewelry from various pawn shops, but most of the sentimental items are gone forever. The family photos they stole or destroyed can never be replaced. I keep thinking about what my grandmother would say if she could see how this all turned out. She tried to warn me about Harold, but I thought I knew better. The whole experience has changed how I view family relationships. Trust, once broken, can't be repaired with just apologies and excuses. Some people will take advantage of family connections without remorse, and being related by blood doesn't obligate you to be their victim. I've learned that the hard way, and it's a lesson I won't forget. Harold's trial starts next month. I'll be testifying, along with his other victims. Several family members have tried to convince me to drop the charges, saying it will destroy the family, but the family was destroyed the moment they chose to defend and enable his criminal behavior. Some bridges, once burned, should stay burned.